In this video, I'm going to give you my final picks for UFC 305. We're going to talk DraftKings, lineup construction, what you need to do to be successful on this slate. As always, you can call me Kunith. Let's make some money this week. We'll start with value plays. These are going to be fighters at 8,000 and below, essentially underdogs that you're going to need in your lineup to make everything work salary-wise. There are a couple that I like this week. But before we look at them, if you haven't already, go back and check out the predictions video from earlier in the week. That's going to be linked in the description and in a pinned comment. That is a full card breakdown, different leans, different stuff. You're going to want that before you watch this. So put a pin in this, go watch that, come back and talk to me. But as far as our value plays go at 8,000 and below, I think a lot of underdogs are pretty live on this card. And I'm going to go through the plays that I like the most, starting right at the top of the range, $8,000 Valter Walker. It's a heavyweight fight that we got on our hands, so the likelihood of this going the distance, very low. Valter Walker's going to be bigger. He's got more experience when it comes to MMA, and he's a much better grappler. And if he can get his grappling going in this one, not only does he win this fight, but he probably finishes this fight on the ground. If you're watching this, you probably already know this. We've talked about this time and time again, but if you're new and you don't know, grappling is the most heavily rewarded fighting style when it comes to DraftKings scoring, because you get +5 for the takedown, you're getting points for every second of control time. There's a good chance you're going to be getting points for the significant strikes, and the likelihood of the fight finishing because it's on the mat is way higher than if it was standing for a lot of these fighters. So I think if Valter Walker goes out there, fights the right game plan, doesn't gas out. And if you look at his last fight against Lucas Brzeski, in a fight where he was gassed, he had a reversal, he had 4 takedowns, he had 7+ minutes of control time, he scored 56 points in a decision loss. And Lucas Brzeski's got that weird cardio where he can kind of just hang around, he can get taken down over and over again. We saw that against Carl Williams, and he kept working his way back up. I don't think that Junior Tafa is going to offer the same thing. I think if Walker is able to get to a dominant position on the ground in rounds 1 or 2, then he finishes the fight. So he's one of my favorite value plays of the week at 8,000. Lot to like about Valter Walker. Now the next value play I'm going to show you is a guy that I don't have winning this fight. I predicted it the other way. You saw that in the predictions video. If you don't know why, you can go back and watch, but you gotta play this guy, at least have some allocation. The champion in Dricus du Plessis has been DraftKings gold each and every fight. You look back, he scored 119 last time out, 114 against Whitaker, 119 against Brunson, 126 against Darren Till, scored 110 against Marcus Perez, 108 against Trevin Giles, and you might look at this 80 and think, well, that's not a great score. It could be excused because of all the other good scores, but that's not a great score, but it is. He was priced at 8,000 on that card. He was actually the betting favorite at close, but when DraftKings pricing came out, he was put at 8,000, and that's significant because while he didn't light it up from a scoring perspective, if you go back and you look at that pay-per-view card, the only underdog that won on that card was Julia Stoliarenko. So when you look back, Dricus du Plessis, even at 80 points scored at 8,000, probably showed up on the optimal lineup. And when you start looking at the rest of the scores, triple-digit scores every time outside of that, and it's not like he's ever been a massive betting favorite, never been over $9,000 of DK salary. So Dricus du Plessis, there's a good chance that he's been optimal each and every time he's competed in the UFC. Now, I could see him struggling a bit in this fight with the range, the distance, the jab, the low kick, the lateral movement coming from Adesanya. But not only is this a winnable fight for Dricus du Plessis, but you look at those takedowns that he got against Sean Strickland, those are awesome for DraftKings. Now, those takedowns in real life were largely superficial. They didn't really mean anything during the fight. He just got Sean Strickland down for a second, Strickland pops right back up. But that's what you want on DraftKings, because you're going to get that quick 5 points. Sean Strickland gets back up to his feet, cool, now we're ready to go. Significant strikes again, opens up the chance to secure another takedown. So you like how he mixed in those takedowns, got 6, even if the control wasn't great. Like, this is a guy who was struggling to control like Darren Till at different points in that fight. And Adesanya's super slippery, and he's not impossible to take down. So I could see Adesanya getting taken down real quick, popping right back up to his feet, and that's a quick 5 points for Dricus du Plessis. Is he somebody that you need to be playing like in your single entry contests? No. But if you're running 10, 20, 50, 150 lineups, you're going to want a good piece of Dricus du Plessis, and I would recommend that if you had to choose between one of the two, you play the champion here. I would not recommend playing Adesanya. We'll talk more about that later. But Dricus du Plessis down at 7,900, one of the better value plays of the week. Someone that I like this week, who I don't think is necessarily a popular play. One, it's women's MMA. She's the underdog. She's on a losing streak. She's fighting all the hotness in Luana Santos. Casey O'Neill could show up for you this week because you look at some of the scores that she's posted in the UFC, 140, 110, 131, 122. Highest scoring ceiling. She was optimal back to back to back to back. Ran into Jennifer Maia and really didn't want those problems on the mat because of the submission game. I could almost give her a pass for it, although Jennifer Maia is not as huge of a submission threat in MMA as she was in jiu-jitsu. And then she did get submitted last time out against Ariane Lipski, so it's a bit concerning that she's fighting somebody who's probably going to have better jiu-jitsu than her on the mat, but I do like the situation because of what we talked about during the predictions video earlier in the week. Luana Santos has taken this fight on very short notice. She's beaten fighters, but they're not very good. These are fighters that are not long for the UFC. Juliana Miller's probably not going to ever be UFC caliber. Stephanie Egger is swapping wins and losses constantly. I don't know if she's still in the promotion. And then Maria Agapova last time out, who's probably not going to be in the promotion anymore. Luana Santos is one of these fighters that's going to be favored every time. Casey O'Neill, again, coming off of those 2 losses. Great buy low spot for somebody who can rack up these takedowns. Probably going to be the fresher fighter later for you. And if they're striking a lot in this fight, she can put up high striking totals. You look at that fight against Roxanne Modafferi, 230 strikes landed, almost all of them counted as significant. 137 against Jennifer Maia, almost all of them counted as significant. So the motor's high, and she's going to keep that pace throughout the fight. And I think that Luana Santos is going to fade as the fight goes on, especially because she's explosive and powerful and Brazilian, and Brazilians aren't known for their crazy cardio. So don't sleep on the king this week. I think Casey O'Neill has a real chance at showing up on the optimal lineup down at 7,600 and maybe the highest scoring ceiling on the entire slate. A guy who can break the slate this week would be Kai Kara-France if he comes up with a knockout here. And you might think, well, Steve Erceg's got an amazing chin, and I would agree. If you go back and watch me talk about Steve Erceg on the channel, I think there's a chance he might end up, when it's all said and done, being in that Max Holloway, Drew Dober kind of conversation. But we've kind of talked about why that is before. Why do you know guys are super tough? Why do you know that they're durable? It's because they eat a lot of shots. And I go back and I watch the fight against Alessandro Costa and Steve Erceg. Not a great look for Steve Erceg at all. Costa's landing at will. He's landing combinations. He's landing over the top with right hands. And Kai Kara-France has put people out with these same punches. And I think that it's going to be a very sneaky spot because I think a lot of people are overlooking Kai Kara-France. Not somebody who's ever lit it up from a DraftKings perspective. He's fought a lot in the UFC, but he's only gone north of 103 times. But those times that he does, you need him in your lineup. And you start looking at some of the guys that he's fought, it's a lot of tough guys along the way, and Steve Erceg is no different, but I don't think that Steve Erceg has seen somebody who's going to land with this much power outside of Pantoja, but Pantoja was coming in with more of like a grappling heavy game plan rather than just trying to take your head off, and that's what I think Kai Kara-France looks to do this week. Very interesting down at 7,400. I think he goes under the radar. I could see Kai Kara-France getting it done. If you want to put Bam Bam Tuivasa in there, I'm not mad at you. He's got the knockout upside, but I don't love it this week. The only other guy that I'm looking to play south of 7,500 would be Dan Hooker. Fully picking Dan Hooker to win this fight because Mateusz Gamrot, somebody who has had injuries. He's gone to war many times. He keeps getting dropped over and over and over again. It just, one day, the bottom's going to fall out. The other shoe has to drop. And if you're in Gamrot's position, things are a bit weird for you right now. So you keep getting rocked in these fights. You have to watch a guy that you beat over 5 rounds fight for the title next. You're a massive favorite once again. You've gone through injuries. You've had all these wars. And now you have to deal with a guy who's just a complete wild card and go fight him down under. The energy in there is going to be wild when Dan Hooker starts landing on him. And he's got the knees. He's got the uppercuts. He's got the anti-wrestling strikes in his repertoire that could give somebody like Mateusz Gamrot problems. I don't think Dan Hooker feels like he has anything to lose. I think he's just going to go in there and try to have a good time, try to take your head off, and I think Mateusz Gamrot is going to be kind of trying not to lose more than he is trying to win, while Dan Hooker's just going out there to bang. I really like the Hangman this week down at 6,900. It makes a lot of things work salary-wise for you. We can start building some lineups now with these value plays. If there's anybody that I missed on this list, a value play that you like, drop it in the comments, let me know. But we can blow that up and start building some lineups. We'll start with cash game lineups, so these will be your 50-50s, head-to-heads, double-ups. Before we do, if you don't mind, like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm. You know how the algorithm works. If you don't know what to comment, just stick around for a second, I'll tell you what to do. As far as your cash game lineups go this week, I would recommend stacking the main event. I think this goes the distance. I think both these guys are going to land a lot of strikes. You're going to see some takedowns from Dricus du Plessis like we mentioned before. Ideal situation is they both land a lot of strikes, they go to war, Adesanya wins for you at 8,300. That makes the most sense when it comes to if you're going to be stacking this fight in your cash games. Now you want to grab a punt play, somebody who's cheap, somebody who maybe doesn't get finished. I would probably just land Dan Hooker here. Even if he does get finished, you took a chance, but I think Dan Hooker is a lot more live than a lot of these guys down here. Now you have 89.66 left over per fighter. You could start attacking that mid-range. I think Josh Culibao is interesting. Song Kenan is very interesting. And with 9,700, you can come all the way up here. You can grab somebody like Jack Jenkins, who probably wins by first or second round knockout. So you have your guaranteed winner at the top. You've got your punt play with a path to victory. And then you have 3 favorites that you probably feel pretty good about. So I'm fine with this. Left 100 salary on the table. I really don't see a problem with it. Now, if you don't want this lineup, don't build it. But keep the same kind of theory. You want the punt play, you want the stack, and then you want to grab some people you feel good about. If you want the official cash game core that we land on the site, you can visit kunithmma.com. It's right under the blog section, DFS Strategy Guide. That's also where you're going to find the official betting article of the week. And then there are tools that you have access to, like the lineup optimizer, data model, projections tool, and the community forum tab that a lot of people find pretty helpful more and more on a week-to-week basis, I'd say. All of that can be found on the website, kunithmma.com, linked in the description and in a pinned comment. Now we can build some tournament lineups. So as far as your tournament lineups go, for some of you who may not be as seasoned or may not be as cerebral when it comes to building your lineups, and you think Adesanya is going to get his belt back, that's cool. I think the same thing. But we've talked about this before, and there's enough data and there's enough evidence on the channel that Israel Adesanya is just not somebody you play on DraftKings because he doesn't have a DraftKings friendly style. Last time out, he had a ridiculous price of 9,700. Outside of the outcome, this is just an absurd price for somebody who fights like this because it's a lot of jab, low kick, move laterally, counter, win the minutes, win the rounds, win a decision. But keep in mind, he has had 5 rounds to work many times in the UFC. Last time out, he loses, scores 38 points. He knocks out Alex Pereira as a slight favorite, scores 96 points. That may have gotten you there that night. Maybe. Before that, against Alex Pereira, 8,600, scores 58 points, is knocked out in the 5th round. I use the word knocked out loosely. For some of us, we think that's an early stoppage. He scores 8,600 against Cannoneer, 75 against Reaper in the second fight against Vittori, 85 points. You see guys score more than this in decision wins in 3 rounds, let alone 5 rounds. You go down here, loss over 5 rounds to Jan Blachowicz up at 205. Against Paulo Costa, he scores 102. That's a decent showing. Against Yoel Romero, awful, 49 points. 49 points. We see people lose 3-round fights and score more than that. 106 in the Robert Whittaker fight the first time around, fantastic. 117 against Kelvin Gastelum, fantastic. 56 against the Spider, no good. 126 against Brunson, great. 82, 55, 104. But you're noticing you're not getting these 100-point performances, and you're really not getting a whole lot of knockouts lately. He has the knockout win over Pereira and doesn't break 100 points. Israel Adesanya is not somebody you play on DraftKings. There was a time for it, there was a place for it, but that time has passed. Somebody I do like to play, Carlos Prates. Last time out, he scores 106 points against Charles Radke. Knocked out Trevin Giles in the 2nd round, 95 points. Didn't light it up that day, but he's consistently been priced at 9,200. If he hits his average, you're probably in a pretty good spot. Another guy I think is interesting this week is Song Kenan. I think Song Kenan goes way under the radar. I don't think a lot of people are going to get here, but he's got power. Look at his last 5 fights. Knockdown there, knockdown against Ian Gary, knockdown against Rolando Bedoya. Not somebody who's ever favored as well. So for him to come in here and be favored, I think that means something. If Vegas looks at him and says, yeah, this guy, yeah, he's going to win, we should probably listen because that's not something that happens all that often. So we plug him in the lineup at 8,700. We have 8,025 left over. I'm going to plug Dan Hooker in just to show you how much salary gets opened up. Let's go with King Casey O'Neill for the output, the upside. 8,800 left over per fighter. I might just grab a 3rd value play in Valter Walker, and with 9,600 left over, I can come up here and grab a Jack Jenkins, for example, who has yet to reach that ceiling. He also hasn't fought somebody who's just going to give up 5 minutes into the fight, so Jack Jenkins, if you want to plug him in, I'm cool with that. Let's blow that up and give you another look. Let's say you think And Still is on the table, plug Dricus du Plessis in there. Stewart Nicoll is somebody who is very boom or bust in my opinion. He's either going to finish this fight early or it's going to get real dicey late. But Stewart Nicoll making his debut, 9,000. I don't think a lot of people are going to get here. Jairzinho Rozenstruik in a very interesting fight, a heavyweight. Come down here. Let's grab some of the punt plays, or rather the value plays. You've got Kai Car France. I'm going to plug Casey O'Neill in there again. I probably come here to Josh Culibao because Just like Jack Jenkins, he's got somebody in front of him who's probably going to call it a night early if things aren't going his way. Josh Culibao, also somebody who has yet to hit that scoring ceiling, which makes it interesting on this card because sometimes people open up DraftKings, and you see this a lot, especially with other sports like football, which I'm going to try to keep paying attention to MMA during football season. Like if you look back on the channel historically, I start to taper off, like start to miss some videos, but I'm locked in. Nothing like NFL DFS. But anyway, I say that to say this. In other sports like NFL, a lot of people just game log watch, meaning that they're making their lineups maybe the day of the games or maybe the night before, which there's no problem in that. But what they're doing is they're just looking at how this guy has scored in the past. Oh, he scored well in the past. That means he's going to score well now. Some of you that are watching may be doing the same thing even with MMA. So you might come here, see somebody like Josh Culibao, say, oh, Josh Culibao never scored 100 points in the UFC, never really even broke 80 points in the UFC. I would never play him. And for that reason, there is an opportunity. There's leverage opportunity because if Josh Culibao at 8,500, a favorite when you want to pay up for guys like Jack Jenkins, a lot of people want to play Mateusz Gamrot, a lot of people want to play Jairzinho Rozenstruik, rightfully so. He goes under the radar. We're talking sub 20% ownership from my projection. And I would assume that if he comes out here and scores north of 95 DraftKings points, he ends up being optimal. You could literally play that game a couple of times here, like with Josh Culibao, with somebody like Kai Kara-France. Song Kenan is somebody who could do the same thing, so just keep an eye out for that. If you're going through the game log and you're seeing that people haven't scored all that well, but there's a path for them to score well in the fight that they have this week, maybe you want some allocation of them, a little sprinkle of ownership. Let's build another one. Let's go with Valter Walker here. Let's say we want to go with Song Kenan. Let's say we want to go with Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Let's see if we could plug Tom Nolan in there and have any kind of space. We plug in Dricus du Plessis. And then we don't have anything left. We don't have anything left because I'm never playing Herbert Burns. If he gets a first round submission, if he gets any win, Herbert Burns breaks the slate. But he's just looked so bad lately. I don't think his heart is in it. And then Alex Reyes, I think he's really up against it this week, and we wouldn't play him anyway because we have Tom Nolan in this lineup. So I'd probably try to adjust things a little bit here. I might take out somebody like Song Kenan just to be able to come up here to afford a Dan Hooker, because then I can get right back to Josh Culibao. I'm fine with that. Let's blow that up. I'll give you another look. Let's say we went with Nicoll. Let's say you came here to Gamrot because you believe in Gamrot. Let's say you're like, you know what, Kunith, I think Adesanya knocks him out. Let's plug him in, although I'm telling you now, he's not somebody I play. Kai Kara-France, I'm going to go with Casey O'Neill. I'm going to grab Valter Walker and leave 400 salary on the table, which leaving salary on the table, especially on a pay-per-view card, great way for you to get different. If we wanted to leave a lot of salary on the table, we could do something like this where we play Dan Hooker. I'm going to come here to Valter Walker. We've got 87.75 left over, so I might grab one more value play. In this situation, let's just grab Casey O'Neill. 91.66 left over, and now we're going to try to keep it cheap if we can. So Jairzinho Rozenstruik, got Song Kenan, 9,900 left over per fighter. You can afford anyone. So you can come up here to 9,800, play Tom Nolan, but you've left 100 salary on the table. Defeats the purpose of the exercise. But if we want to take Tom Nolan out of there and we come down here to Stewart Nicoll, we've left 900 salary on the table. That's not too bad. Or if you want to come here and play Dricus du Plessis and you've left 2,000 salary on the table, that's not bad either. And let's just break down what the path would be for something like this to win. Dan Hooker by knockout, Valter Walker just doing what he needs to do, getting the fight to the ground, getting a submission, Casey O'Neill scoring anywhere in the neighborhood of what she's done in her first 4 fights. Jairzinho Rozenstruik by knockout if he comes out here and does what he did when he first got into the UFC, those first and second round knockouts. And he's got a guy who's just going to run into something this week, so he could knock Tuivasa out, do it early, and show up on the optimal lineup. Song Kenan, tons of power against the guy who's coming off of back-to-back losses, knockout losses, mind you, in the first round. And he's moving up a weight class to fight Song Kenan, who's been at this weight for a while and is no small welterweight. So he can really put it on him and knock Ricky Glenn out in the first 3 minutes of this fight, score north of 100 DraftKings points, and then somebody with one of the higher, if not the highest, scoring ceiling on the card in Dricus du Plessis. You've left 2,000 salary on the table, basically ensured that you have the most different lineup in the contest. And this is a 1%er. This wins, you win. You'll probably see this lineup get trotted out a handful of times in bigger contests. And if you win, Great. I'll see you on the website. So that'll do it for the tournament lineups this week. I'll try to remember to put the Underdog Fantasy slip on the site, or rather in the community tab on YouTube this week. But real quick, if you want to play in the $1 winner take all contest on DraftKings, there's going to be a link in the description and in the pinned comment. If you don't want to click that link and you just want me to send you an invitation, for people who have put their stuff in the comments before, add them as a friend, and that way you just don't miss it. It pops right up on your phone. So if you want that, you can put that down in the comments. But that'll do it for this week. I hope you have a great time with UFC 305. Best of luck, drink your water, and I'll see you next week.